What's your best fire me? I freaking dare you moment from work. For the past few years I've worked at one of the nicer restaurants in my small beach town. I'm one of the only servers there who cares about doing a good, and I'm the only one who doesn't take a smoke break every 15 minutes. This past summer a new, very illegal, rule was implemented that if we messed up an order in any way we would be liable to pay for that messed up food. I usually didn't have a problem with mess ups, so I didn't bring up the legality of this matter since I make good money and don't want to start fires in places that don't concern me. That until I rang in a cherry glaze burger instead of a cherry glaze steak, each stylized CGB and CGS in our crappy computer system. I fixed this with the kitchen, but not before they had already started the burger. I told my manager and she just gave me a disappointed and told me that the rules are the rules. I then dived into both federal and state workers' rights code and told her she would never see me again if I found any money out of my tips at the end of the night. Never had a problem fixing an order again. Was working in a restaurant. Already knew I was sick, but our managers were buttholes and I knew if I called in they'd be extremely pissy. Showed up to work around 8 AM. By 9 AM I knew I wasn't gonna last the rest of the day. Manager still made me stay. Around 9:30 I was pre-bussing my tables and just the sight of half-eaten food pushed me over the edge. Managed to hold my vomit until I got to the dishwashing area but puked in a trash can immediately after putting my plates down. A co-worker saw me and vouched for me when I went to tell my manager I was leaving for the doctor. He said, even with a doctor's note, if you leave work today you'll be fired. I said, you have human waste in a kitchen trash can and haven't even done anything about it. It's on camera. I'm leaving. Showed up for work a few days later and didn't hear anything about it. Ended up quitting a few weeks later for a job at a couple considerably higher scale restaurant. Put in my 2 weeks notice at wildly understaffed job. 6 days later got sick. I call around and see if anyone can take my shift. No one is available. Tried to call out that morning. Crappy manager tries to persuade me to come in even though I am barfing everywhere. I non-committally agree to call in later in the day to see if I am feeling up to coming in anyway. Call back. Say I am still sick and will not be coming in. Manager blows up at me in front of customers, being rude as frick. Eventually asks what I expect to do about the shift needing to be covered. I say I have done everything I am required to and it sounds like a management problem to me. Hang up and turn my phone off. I was elbows deep in an AT&T Unix machine that should have been replaced a decade before, parts strewn all over a desk, when the client came in to see what was taking me so long. Me, you've got 3 dead fans. One of the power supplies has failed. There's a bad CMOS battery and the video card is glitchy and refusing to allow the machine to POST sometimes. Client, so how long is that going to take? 15 minutes? Me, laughing. I can patch things up in a couple hours, but I'm going to have to come back in a few days with new parts. Client, if you can't fix it in the next half hour you're fired. I'll find someone that knows what they are doing. I stood up, grabbed my tools, and started walking. Client, where are you going? Me, I told her how long it would take, and that's longer than a half hour, so I guess I'm fired. My firing lasted about 3 more steps towards the door. Man, oh, man do I hate bossy people who do not even know how things work. Worked at a private medical college in Punjab, India. They wanted me to falsify patient admissions to get increased grants from Govt. I refused. They said that I would be fired. I was the only resident with specializing in orthopedics. I was let go. Then came surprise checking by Gov medical body. I was offered 3 times my monthly pay to attend for 1-day inspection. I asked for 5 times and they agreed. I ditched out at the last moment. They lost their recognition of depth of orthopedics with insufficient residents. No admission in ortho till next checking. That's freaking evil. I love it. 2004. Worked at a municipality department. One day the programmers update the work PCS and block pretty much everything and anything, no internet at all. No authorization for installing anything. All games removed from Windows. They even removed the calculator function for some reason. Then the supervisors started moving co-workers around and my entire team was dispersed across a gigantic building. For no reason. We were the top team in terms of results. The supervisors simply hated our guts for some reason. So me and one of the co-workers tried to devise some way to have communication without having to travel for 5 minutes each time, across the building and down a floor, just to get to each other's desk and ask a simple yes or no question. We do this during our lunch break. Our supervisor butts in and asks what we're doing. We explain we're trying to save time and maximize communication and results. The supervisor, who doesn't like us anyway, says we should get back to work and quit trying to communicate through unauthorized means. Okay, we simply stopped trying to install Messenger on our phones. One day later the supervisor is looking for my coworker. I don't know where he is. I say so. Well then contact him through your Messenger program. The one you told us to quit installing? Yes, we gave up on that, on your orders. She tried to get me fired for refusing to obey basic orders. I explained the situation to her superior. He let me get back to work and told me to ignore her from then on. I moved to a better post a few months later because she made my life unbearable from that day on. And I finally went and told the upper floor they'll either move me elsewhere or I quit. My dog became very ill quite suddenly and he needed to be put down. I was at work and I asked to leave half an hour early so I could be there for him. I asked my manager and she got annoyed and said there was no way and that I should have told her earlier. I said I'm sorry, I didn't realize my dog was going to die in the most sarcastic way possible, then walked away knowing she'd follow me. I then stood at my desk and typed my resignation up in front of her. She gave me the time off. No one was going to stop me from being there for my boy. I was working at a shoe store in a mall and I requested a week in August off for my wedding. My manager told me her boss wasn't happy about that and all I said was my wedding is more important than back to school sales. They didn't fire me, per se. They just stopped scheduling me and eventually my access to the employee website went away. That's called constructive dismissal and is illegal in some circumstances. I used to work at a small, family-owned grocery store for a few years. We got our load in on Mondays and Thursdays, and we got passed over one Monday and the distributor said we'd get the missing load in on Thursday. So, what essentially happened was a double load and my two receiving partners were out sick. I was the only person in the warehouse receiving at the time, and got to take on 15 plus pallets of groceries that needed to hit the shelves immediately. I was specifically told to not go up front, and to do what I could while the front end crew covered the aisles and cash registers. Well, a lot of them were either lazy, untrained, or just putting in their hours so they could pay bills. I put in my earbud, just one, and get to work. I'm halfway through the checking in the pallets when I get called up front, so I ignore it and continue. Then I get called again, so I head up there and get yelled at by a new hire with a bad attitude to do your job and bag for me. The customer was a regular and we got along very well, and she told me that she was fine and could bag her own groceries. Between the customer and the fact that I wasn't having it, I walked away. I had 3 years and 2 ranks on her, so I didn't give half of a crap and went back to my pallets. Then I get the newest hotshot manager, who replaced the old hotshot manager, who replaced the beloved manager who trained basically the whole store, in my face about having an earbud in on the clock, which is allowed as long as you have on ear free, and said I could be sent home and not come back if I wanted to listen to music. So I gestured to the pallets and said go for it. These all need to be checked in and broken down. Have fun. I got to keep my earbud in, so I had that going for me, which was nice. Never make threats that you can't keep. Such a simple concept. First kitchen I worked in, they told me, the more jobs I learned, the more I'd get paid. Came in basically knowing all of it anyway. 6 months later I had learned every job there except one spot. They told me if I learned that spot, I'd get a raise. I told them I could find a new kitchen. I was easily one of the best employees there, and that I was told the more I learned the more I'd get paid, and I still hadn't been given a raise. Head chef cracked and gave me a raise. I told him 50 cents wasn't enough. He was forced to give me another. 2 weeks after that, they fired the banquet chef's assistant. We had a lot of 300 plus people events, and told him to pick his new assistant. He immediately requested me. I told them I needed another raise. I was told no again. I said I'll find a new job. Came in the next day and put my 2 weeks in. Yup, found the job that quick. Wound up making more money in that kitchen than anyone beside the banquet chef and the head chef. That's how I wound up getting 3 raises in a month. It's amazing nowadays that you always have to or almost have to jump ship before you get a raise that's worth keeping you there. I'm sure everyone's had that tyrannical boss who was so drunk with power that everyone hated him and he felt like that was a sign that he was doing a good job, right? About 20 years ago I was working as a delivery driver at a Pizza Hut and they transferred in a manager who couldn't seem to get along. The area supervisor point blank told me that he was on his last leg and if he caused any problems they were going to let him go. I was kind of the lead driver, no title or extra pay, but I was the one who trained new drivers and for some reason this guy decided I needed to be taken down a notch. Just harassed me and was on my crap constantly. Surely the office told him he needed to adjust his attitude, but I'm not sure if this guy was capable. Anyway, one day I told him to frick off. I was more valuable to the store than he was, and if he really wanted to show who's in charge he should learn how to do his job better. He flew into a rage, swept a big stack of lids off of a shelf and ordered me to rewash them and put them away. I just punched out and went home. It was the middle of the afternoon and I was the only driver at the time. About 30 minutes later I get a call from the supervisor telling me to come back because they were taking care of things. Got back just in time to see him sulking off with his termination papers. I don't typically take pleasure in other people's pain, but it actually felt pretty good. I hope he learned his lesson, but somehow I doubt it. Well, not really work but still. I was an intern at a 3D printer company. The manager was a complete piece of shit. On my first week he made a co-worker cry because she sent an order to the wrong client. She apologized to the customer and he didn't mind. She sent the right one afterwards, however the manager screamed and yelled at her for the entire week. It was a small company and I was sitting next to her at the time, but I didn't know how to react to the situation because if I was afraid he would fire me and then I wouldn't pass class. Well, the week after that I made a wrong sketch of an advertisement and he just completely lost his mind. He screamed and yelled at me. I stood up, called my school and said what happened. They called the manager and was threatened to take his intern license away. I was left alone with my schoolwork after that and he never screamed at any of us ever again. Passed the internship barely, and he hated my guts after the incident. Peace. Sorry if my English is not that great. Company was doing badly in the 2008 depression. They hired an expensive new vice president to lead our division who asked me barely 1 month in to sack any 2 people from my team of software engineers whoever I felt like because she said so, as layoffs were necessary to ensure long-term stability, or some such. I steadfastly refused and dared her to fire me instead, and the issue really blew up at the time. Before they could fire any of us though, a new contract came along which needed more people to execute than we even had on our rolls. They didn't hire anyone new but we had to slog our asses to deliver the project. The VP got fired a few months later as she was way too expensive and wasn't adding enough value. Aircraft technician here working on an air ambulance on a very small island in the middle of nowhere. We used to be too lame. Licensed aircraft maintenance engineer. On this position cause we work 15 days 24 hours schedule, but a new company bought our old one and the other guy left for a position closer home, and after 6 months they haven't been able to fill the position and have to send a guy 15 days each month, paying flights and hotel that costs 100-200 euros per day cause this is a very expensive and popular holiday place. I'm from this island and after lots of years out of home I'm happy to be back. They want to lower my salary 30% or get fired cause I get nearly twice what they used to pay. Told me to accept or they will put another guy on my position. Yeah, good luck finding 2 lame that want to live here when you haven't find one. Told my boss 2 weeks in advance that I was taking PTO on Monday and Tuesday. She approved it, no problem. I take the days off and went out of town for a school thing. I come back into the office on Wednesday and I'm locked out of my account. I talk to the operations manager, my boss's boss, who was the person who interviewed and hired me to see what's going on. He told me that my boss said I disappeared and didn't contact anybody for 2 days. I explained it to him and he said no problem. I talked to my boss later in the afternoon and she is furious. Starts saying how I didn't tell anybody that I was taking PTO and thought I just suddenly quit. I don't know what the frick this bee was talking about because I told her 2 weeks ago that I was going to be out those 2 days and I have the emails to prove it. At this point I was the only person left on my team of 4 people who were there when I was hired. I was already planning on quitting in next month as I had to move for school. This bee had the audacity to threaten to fire me. I said, if you feel like you need to let me go for your mistake, go ahead. Ended up working there for another 7 weeks before leaving on my terms. Even got to use the operations manager as a reference for another job. The best is when there are written emails proving you are right and they still argue lol. I was hired on as a part-time assistant manager, and then immediately told I would be working part-time at 2 different restaurants. I knew things were shady as soon as they gave me 2 separate paychecks. Then, less than a month later, they had someone go on vacation and needed me to cover their shifts. Suddenly, I was working 80-hour weeks. At the end of the pay period, I took my checks into the office and asked why I wasn't being paid overtime. They said that they weren't required to pay overtime because technically I worked 2 jobs. I looked them in the eye and said, this is my 2 weeks notice for one of my jobs. They said they needed someone that worked 2. Are you formally telling me that my employer requires me to keep 2 separate payrolls so that you aren't required to pay me overtime? They said they couldn't afford to pay me overtime and I stood my ground and told them that I would work a maximum of 40 hours per week. After a brief back and forth, they agreed. Then, about a week later, another manager had a death in the family. They scheduled me for 80-hour weeks again without asking while the other manager took time off to grieve. Then, one day one of the payroll people came by one of my restaurants and politely asked, how are you? I said, I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit stressed about the amount of hours I've been working for the last couple months. Then, she said, you should be grateful you are getting paid. I immediately told her that Then, I told them that if I ever saw a schedule that had me listed for even 41 hours, I would walk immediately. They met my demands in that they reduced my hours. I ended up quitting less than 2 months later anyways, because it's really a shady business. I worked at Burger King as a teenager. One day, the assistant manager, who illegally brought her teenage daughter to work to help her out, asked me to clean the restrooms. It wasn't my normal job but I didn't mind. I had a good attitude about it and prepared to go clean the bathrooms. I walked into the men's room and discovered that the reason she asked me to do it was because someone crap all over the bathroom, smeared fecal matter on the walls, the sink, the floor, the outside of the toilet. The toilet was clogged and hand wet, used toilet paper inside of it and all over the room. It was a complete disaster. I walked out of the bathroom, went back to the kitchen and told the assistant manager I'm not cleaning that. You can fire me but I'm not cleaning it. She sighed heavily and went and got a mop. Worked at a cancer non-profit. Hired a lady who knew about us because her kid had cancer. Boss wanted me to fire her because she had to come in late or leave early to take her kid to chemo. I refused. Boss said she'd fire me if I didn't. I told her she could go right ahead. Our CEO said no way. I got fired from a non-profit helping veterans with PTSD. Because I needed time off to deal with PTSD. They chalked it up to being too small to have to conform with FMLA leave. Made me learn real fast everyone involved doesn't give a crap when it's real. I was in the military and was trying to take my vacation time before I lost the days. They denied my requests 4 different times and I hadn't had a day off in 3 months and I was working 12-16 hours shifts most days. I was beyond done. I was teaching some new guys part of the tasks for one job. Everything was fine. I went somewhere else in the hangar to do something else on the plane. This quality assurance guy that everyone knew was a pain came in. I did my stuff good and he never bothered me so I didn't pay him any attention. He started talking to one of the new dudes. He then asked to talk to me and pulled me aside. He then asked why I hadn't told the new guy about some super obscure caution about water under a grate in the hangar floor. Something that had nothing to do with our job so it didn't matter. He was just being a pain. I was over the job and him so I told him, listen Sergeant QA, I've been denied my leave 4 separate times and I've been working for 3 months straight. So if you have a problem with the way I taught them, write me up. I don't give a f and you can stuff it up your 2. Tell my boss I said that. It was a little extreme but I was pushed to the point. When I went back and I knew I was in deep because the guy walked out of my shop head's office and I got called right in. When I went in there, the shop head said, "I heard what happened out there. Submit the days you want to take leave right now and I'll approve it for you." Then told me I could leave. That's all I heard about it. I was shocked. Nobody so far has given an example of when they did it and got fired, so I will, but some details are changed for privacy. I worked at a terrible retail boutique in college. Worked my way up to management. Their pay policies were illegal, and the idiot district director they hired staffed terribly. I worked open to close by myself multiple times. I finally locked up in the middle of the day to go take a break once. Got caught. Told if I did it again I'd be fired. Said stop staffing so crappy. They did it again. I locked up again and a customer called corporate. I was fired. Last laugh was on them because I threatened to sue them for violating employment law. Longer backstory not for here. Sure did. Class action. Multi-million-dollar settlement getting back lost wages for 1,000 plus employees across multiple states. Plus unemployment for me. Actually what led to a complete life change for me, and I wouldn't be as successful now had I just let them continue to abuse me. Short-term financial pain and scary when you don't know how you will afford food or how to pay bills. Made it through and definitely worth it. Not only for me but a lot of people benefited. Frick you PK you piece of crap. You don't deserve to still be in business. I've been at the company a long time, therefore I know both day and night shift duties in and out, are well liked by our clients and in charge of training the new recruits. Most work for us up to 6-12 months before growing tired on the workload or finding that they can't handle the job or just wanted cash enough to study up for something else. Anyway, they are heavily dependent on me. My closest boss threatened to fire me for being home one day and drinking beer when I was supposed to be at work. 2 weeks prior I had agreed to do overtime, but I wanted a new schedule so I would not miss it. I got a new schedule, but she had forgotten to fill in that day on it. She blamed me for it anyway and said it was grounds for terminating my contract. I dared her to do it and see how long we could stay in business. Worked for an online marketing firm doing SEO reports and optimization. This was my first job, so I didn't understand the concept of start working slow so you have room to improve. Well, I was working at 100% and doing well. 1 week, my girlfriend of 4 years broke up with me and I was taking it roughly. I was kinda scatterbrained and slowed down a little bit. I told my boss this and he was like, "Okay, we'll try not to stay like this for long." So 3 days go by and I'm better and working 100% again. So like a week later he calls me in and says, "I need you to do almost all of your co-workers' work because you're better at it than he is and he's gonna do something else now." Sure, I'll do my best but I can't make any promises I'll get it all done. So I'm now working 2 people's jobs in the time of 1. I finish 1 in 3/4 of the work and then get called into his office. He's claiming I fricked him over and I slowed down for too long. So I say, "Fire me then. I'm tired of doing all this extra crap and I promise you need me." Well, I got fired. 2 weeks later, he calls me up and asks me to come back. Says he can't do all of the work. I tell him, "Good. Maybe you won't treat your employees like crap next time." Went out of business like a month later. That's a good butt ending. A manager threatened to fire me because I wouldn't make some system changes that would have led the company very open to a cyber attack. I had recorded a phone call between the manager and I where I explained the risk and that we needed someone more senior to sign off on that risk before I would make the change. He swore at me and told me just to freaking do it, which was all captured on the recording. He didn't know I was recording. At the HR meeting where he was going to effectively fire me, I insisted on bringing representation and at the time the policy said I could bring whoever I wanted. So I chose his boss. The meeting starts, the manager cites insubordination etc and I just sat there. When they eventually said, "We are giving you formal notice," I just asked, "Are you sure?" He replied, "Yes." My representative, his boss, at this point had said nothing. It was at this point I played the recording. I was asked to leave the room. I was called back 15 minutes later, apologized, given a pay rise and informed that the manager will no longer be working on this client site or any client site we supported. When I worked in environmental remediation I had a similar thing happen. Edit. Few things, Ian, but I'm enjoying the discussion below related to party consent laws. The answer is always just know what your state regulation, and if you illegally recorded someone it's not something your boss will be excited to hear about. Just know your state. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.